Hi, my name is Katelyn Moe, and I'm a graduate student at Morningside College and a teacher at Waukee Community School District. And I am presenting my study, The Effects of Goal Setting on Kindergarten through Second Grade Students' Behavior and Math Achievement. With this study, I wanted to address the problem of 54% of students being considered below proficient in the area of math in the state of Iowa, and that's according to the National Assessment of Educational Progress. I also wanted to address the problem of challenging student behaviors getting in the way of instruction and learning. As a special education teacher, I'm extremely passionate about unique learners. It's my responsibility to make instructional decisions and proposals for student programming to support academic and behavior growth for all of the students that I teach. I worked with a population of students this past year that required individualized interventions for academic achievement, as well as significant behavior supports. I wanted to test a goal-setting intervention that correlated directly to our school-wide Leader in Me program, and that would potentially have a positive impact on students both academically and behaviorally. My ultimate motivation for using a goal-setting intervention was to teach and provide guided practice and to work to generalize on how to set and achieve goals with my students, as that's a skill that will help them not only in the school setting, but outside of the school setting and even beyond their educational career. As I dug deep into literature, I saw some themes. So students with learning and behavior disabilities may struggle with task engagement, which is something that I observe in my role as a special education teacher. Antecedent manipulations are used to prevent problem behavior from happening, and those are things that could be listed in a student's behavior intervention plan. So things like social stories, academic routines, minimizing distractions within a classroom, those would all be things that would fall under the category of antecedent manipulations. And then planning and goal setting interventions had a positive impact on task engagement for students. One of the studies that I dug deep into was one from Stevenson in 2016. And he studied task engagement latency of students in the middle school setting. This study focused on transition times, so from the initial bell to signal the beginning of class, and that latency or how long it took students to initially engage in their independent work. Some of the limitations of this study were that it only measured the latency to the initial engagement in the task, but didn't look at the student's engagement throughout the task. And further, the study did not include a post score for the reading achievement data that he collected for this study. And it would have been helpful to see how that task engagement would impact those academic scores. So I wanted to address the gap in the research of there's just little focus on motivational strategies such as goal setting to increase task engagement and academic achievement for our youngest learners. The purpose of my study was to examine the effects of a goal-setting intervention to increase task engagement, behavior, and then also improve curriculum-based math scores. So the way that I structured my study, using my 5 participants or my 5 students, they're all grades kindergarten through second grade, and they had all varying racial backgrounds, but similar socioeconomic backgrounds, and they are all served in special education. Materials that I used for this study were Easy CBM, which is a curriculum-based math measure, and then whole interval task engagement data. For the reliability and validity measures for Easy CBM, there was a Cronbach's alpha of 0.86 and criterion validity of 0.518. I did not have reliability or validity measures for the task engagement data collection because that was something that I had created on my own. The study was an A-B single subject design. And I used 12 weeks for my study. The first 3 weeks were a baseline phase. The next 3 weeks were an intervention phase. And then following that were another 3 weeks of baseline and another 3 weeks of intervention. I collected the data that I used for analysis on the last day of each week. Typically, it was a Friday. And during the baseline phases, I did not implement the goal-setting intervention each day with students. But during the intervention phase, I did implement the goal-setting intervention during the first 5 minutes of math instruction with each student. For the goal-setting routine, the students were first prompted to transition to work with me. Then we introduced the chosen goal, or if it was time to choose a new goal, we went ahead and did that. And then for the remainder of the 5 minutes was a discussion of the action steps for meeting this goal and how the students were going to work toward growing academically in this area. And then I would kind of filter through and help create those action steps for the students. And then we would close with restating the target learning goal. I used visual data inspection for the data analysis, which looks at trends, levels, and the variability of the data. Okay, let's dig in. Let's look at the results. This first section is about the task engagement data. So on this slide, there are the 5 graphs one for each student for task engagement data. You'll see on the bottom are the week's number, and then the percent they were engaged along the vertical axis. So you'll notice that the 5 graphical analyses of the student task engagement data did not support the hypothesis that the goal-setting intervention that I implemented was going to be more effective than not implementing the goal-setting intervention. And that's because during the baseline phases, it was kind of all over the place. There were some increasing trends, some decreasing trends, and then there was just inconsistent data, again, during the intervention phase. Another way to look at the data with this descriptive statistics table, so along the top lists each week, and then below that in each column are some of the descriptive data for each week. So you'll notice that the mean score increased pretty significantly for the percent the students were engaged from the first week to the last week, and they steadily increased over the course of the study, which raised some questions for me. And if I could go back and do the study again, I think I'd look a little bit deeper into that. The math achievement data will follow here. So again, the 5 graphical analyses of the student math assessment data didn't support the hypothesis that goal-setting intervention would have long or big effects on the math achievement data. And again, that's due to some of the baseline phases having increasing trends and then the intervention phases not having consistent data. So again, the hypothesis was not supported. This table is looking at the descriptive statistics for the math achievement data. And again, you'll notice that across the 12 weeks, the mean score did increase, which again raised some questions for me. And I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into that if given more time to do this in this study. Connecting back to the research, this study was focused on creating and implementing an antecedent strategy of a goal-setting intervention that was designed to help the students engage in their academic work, which would hopefully help them increase their academic achievement as well in the area of math. The study was connected to growth mindset. Self-regulated learners can engage in an academic task. They can then solidify content knowledge by being engaged in their learning and engaging in the goal in that academic setting. And then increasing academic achievement would be what would happen if students were self-regulated and could engage in their learning. And with that growth mindset, they would then feel successful and the latency to engage in the task would decrease. Some implications for this study. For one, Students have predictable and individualized learning routines that are directly connected to grade level standards. And for teachers, this is helpful because teachers are responsible for creating purposeful plans, and this is just a natural way to connect all of those pieces together. Further, administrators can continue to support individual students in their specific learning goals, and parents as well can help to continue to support their students with their individual, their specific learning goals. Some limitations for this study. One was time. If I had more time, I'd be able to collect more data and then maybe even make more precise data analyses using those trends and the variability of the data. I'd be interested to see what that would look like. Sample size is another one, only having 5 students. That's a pretty small population to look at. And within that small population, we had some pretty diverse learners, some pretty different needs. So having a bigger sample size would give more reliable data. Further, the social emotional influences. Some of the students had some pretty significant behaviors that impacted learning time for all of the students in this study. And then external influences like students not getting breakfast in the morning or not having medication or parents choosing to change medication midway through the study did impact, I believe, the task engagement. So some recommendations looking forward for further research would be to have a longer length of study, potentially a whole school year would be interesting to see what that would look like, including more participants, and then including some other academic areas. I'd be interested to see what the impacts for writing and for reading could be using a goal-setting intervention as well. And then here are the references for the research that I referenced earlier in my presentation. Thanks so much for listening, and please ask any questions that you might have. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.